Hey guys, what's going on? It is me, Filmington, and we are going to talk about wax prices. A lot of people are complaining that wax is too expensive, it's out of touch with reality, and a lot of people are putting the sole blame on breakers and the people that buy into breaks, that being the main factor that's driving the cost of wax up. And while I think a lot of that is true, you're going to have people that can basically fractionalize hobby boxes and get into a box at a more affordable price point. If you look at all the factors of breaking, you've got convenience, you've got access to product, and you've got an experience, you've got personalities that you can spend some time with, and some of which are put on a pedestal in this space as, oh, well, I'm just fortunate enough to spend time with this influencer, and they're paying a little bit more for that. And because the end consumer that buys into breaks is paying a bit more than what they would have if there were 30 of these people and they were mustering up a certain amount of money to find the cheapest box available on like an online retailer's website, it's creating the ability for group breaking companies to pay more for wax because they just need a margin on top. But because that margin on top is based on 30 times X, which ends up being more than what somebody would normally pay for the box, they're able to buy in source product at higher prices. And because a lot of products, not all products, are getting broken via group breaks, but because a lot of products are, and those percentages are different again based on the product being higher end and what have you, that's creating some pressure, some upward pressure on prices, some support, especially 2 to 3 weeks after release of products. So that's there, but also there's some other factors. We've got inflation. So if you look at it from the manufacturer's perspective, goods inflation, so what they're spending for raw materials, that could come down to paper, that could come down to labor. That's going to be more expensive than it was 3 to 4 years ago. And you could look at the increased factory cost. What they're charging for distributors and shops to buy directly from them has gone up, but a lot of that is because they're taking advantage of, where Tops didn't. They're not letting the distributors figure out and set prices. They're kind of already taking steps to understand demand, and they're trying to set their price higher, and therefore eliminating all, if not most, of the cut that the middlemen would take. So, some of that factory cost being more expensive is because of inflation of goods, raw materials. Some of it is because Fanatics is just doing a better job taking advantage of their place in the food chain, and they're able to sell a little bit more directly now, and they've already cut distributors, so that has been a reality that they've been able to take advantage of that. But there is another component, and I believe it is the service inflation. So if you look at what are services versus goods? Services are things like hospitality, culture, entertainment, and this is where I believe that breaking is an experience, and people are paying for the experience just as much, if not more, than they're paying for the good itself. And we've seen, I think, service inflation peaked out at about 8%. Now it's probably back down to 4%. But services and experiences cost more in 2023 than they did in 2022 and 2021, and they're probably not going down. So, in my opinion, the initial launch, that's when more people, a higher percentage of people are actually buying the product to open it. And if they're buying it to open it with that intention, then I believe it's an experience or a service. And I believe that inflation component on the services is almost like a compounding effect to already you've got inflation of the goods. And then again, we talked about group breakers driving up the cost as well. So that's three things, right? This is probably the most important part to understand, in my opinion. But then you've got all this pressure, downward pressure on singles. So when people bash the price of wax, often it's in context of what are the components worth at the end of the day. And that is out of whack. If that wasn't out of whack, if there was more value in what you opened in those single cards inside the box, then people wouldn't have as much of an issue with the box prices, in my opinion. But there's a reason for that. So you've got, if you look at 2021, right before the Fed decided to start increasing rates month over month over month and took that pretty seriously, we saw the down market start to stabilize. I think it was around like Q3 of 2021. And then as soon as those rate hikes happened, if you look at basically any card market index that exists, it started to go back down again. So in my opinion, the singles market wasn't just crushed by stimulus packages ending, so fiscal policy, but also monetary policy being the bigger factor. Alternative assets, collectibles, it's just not a very good asset class right now with interest rates at the current level that they're at. We've seen this across other like NFTs. We saw it across more mature collectibles and other alternative assets as well. Just haven't done well in this environment, right? So you've got a weird situation. Usually this wouldn't happen at the same time, where we got like pretty high inflation and interest rates that are higher than they were a few years ago. What's happening here is the higher interest rates are bad for singles, and the inflation is it's got an upward effect of the wax, and that's creating a divide. Interest rates at the current levels that they're at are also bad for wax prices in theory, right? Because it's just a compilation of a number of singles, but where that's the case, I believe, like 6 months after the product's out, 12 months after the product's out, where it's no longer being purchased with the intent to open, but it's being purchased with the intent to speculate, and then it's treated more like an alternative asset versus an experience. So that's where you get that pretty big divide at the release of certain products, because again, experience versus whatever's inside is going to be speculative alternative assets, which are getting crushed by interest rates. So interest rates are hurting one, but they're not hurting the other. Inflation is actually boosting the cost of wax, the good aspect of it, the service aspect of the wax at release, because it's being opened as an experience. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you agree, disagree? Spill it all out down below. But I think if all of this is true, at some point, inflation is already slowing down, it's decelerating. If all of this is true, the balance of the two will never really be even, as it really never was in the past, but I don't think it'll be as pronounced as inflation starts to slow down and start to get down to the 2 to 3%, long-term target, or whatever the Fed's going for here. If they're able to achieve that within the next year or two, I still think there'll be a divide, but a lot of this also depends on the interest rate levels and how sensitive are card prices, singles card prices, to the level of interest rates versus the change of interest rates. Do we need to get back down to something closer to zero, or is a substantial reduction in that change itself going to help the prices of single cards? I don't know. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Take care. Filmington out.